Orisa, the current problem child of the tank role in Overwatch 2. I'm sure we can all agree, unless you're that one guy on Reddit who thinks Ball is overpowered and should be nerfed. But if you are, anyone with a IQ above 15, you would probably realize that Orisa is definitely the most problematic tank hero in the game currently. You're free to disagree, but you're also free to be wrong. Essentially, the problem with Orisa is a couple of things. Predominantly her survivability, but also things like her general cooldown rotation and just like her general playstyle and how she is played efficiently is relatively problematic as well. So the first thing I want to address is her survivability. So this comes slightly from her cooldown usage, but is also just simply the hero themselves. With very good poking ability, although not as good as some other tanks, but definitely still pretty good. She can stand relatively far away before she actually has to do anything productive, which is like every Orisa player ever, who just does nothing all game and stands there. But also because of a delightful cooldown called Fortify, which the devs were smoking copious amounts of meth when they decided to create, where essentially she pushes a button and she gains massive amounts of damage resistance, I believe 50%, while also making it so she is immune to all crowd control and she can't be headshot. So that was a really, really clever idea from the devs. Now, you can't rag on them too much. Orisa is quite an old character. She released quite a few years ago in Overwatch 1, and people were relatively happy with her playstyle back then. To a certain degree, obviously she was a little overpowered, but generally, people were not too upset with Orisa. The reason she is so problematic now is for a couple of reasons. First of all, at the end of Overwatch 1, she was extremely problematic because she enabled a comp called Double Shield. People don't really understand why Double Shield was so problematic, and they all think it was because of two shields, which is part of the problem, but is not entirely true. Double Shield was predominantly an issue simply because they paired well with Sigma, and Orisa and Sigma having two shields as well as a ton of self-sustain and the ability to basically hunker down anywhere even without their shields made them problematic. It was their survivability stacked on top of their ability to CC, use shields, poke, and like mitigate tons of damage, which was generally the issue. But right now, Orisa's current problem is not too dissimilar to how it was before, where now, essentially, all she does is stand AFK, and when people shoot her, she pushes her buttons, because that's how her cooldowns work, and that is efficient Orisa gameplay for you. And that is why people hate playing against this hero, and why people equally hate playing as this hero. I think every time I've ever queued into a decently high-level game, maybe like mid to high GM, maybe top 500, essentially every single player has at one point during the game complained that Orisa was being played by either one of the players playing tank. Another issue that Orisa is causing is the fact that if you are playing Orisa, the extremely boring, extremely overpowered, extremely brain-dead, simple-to-play hero, you are also forcing other players to play Orisa too, because that is the only counter. Now, some people think Zarya is a very good counter to it, and it's not necessarily a bad counter, it is very good. However, Zarya is a shit hero, so if the enemy team, I don't know, pays attention or perhaps uses their eyeballs, then Zarya will just die. So, now we have a hero who's borderline uncounterable, unkillable, with a fucking disgusting level of cooldown rotation, extremely simple to play, major survivability problems, huge poke potential, as well as being extremely simple and generally very easy to play because they are simply brain dead, and we are pairing all of that into one delightful package of 5v5 mixed with two broken support heroes to increase the amount of self-sustain even higher than it was before. So now you have an unkillable tank with major poking problems, huge cooldown issues, major survivability issues, like I said, mixed with two broken support heroes that have a shitload of healing, a lot of damage, and typically some type of either, invincibility option, movement manipulation option, or just generally aids cooldowns like anti-nade or sleep. And then we have the worst meta I've ever seen in my entire life, barring Hog meta, where Orisa was also good, because she was good at pressing right-click in the general direction of Hog players. Right, now that we've gone over kind of the basics of why this hero is kind of AIDS, I will now be delving into the fact that this hero is actually extremely easy to fix, and I will tell you how to do it. Let her be headshot in Fortify, and change her cooldown rotation, because currently it's very AIDS. So, the way you play Orisa, as of now, is, typically speaking, you will stand her in the corner, you will shoot people, and then when you get pressured, you will fortify, and then you will continue to shoot people and hold the space, and people will probably continue to shoot you, depending on your rank. Perhaps they decide to shoot your team like they're supposed to do, but if you're like a gold player, then they're probably just going to shoot Orisa all day and just waste all of their time. Fantastic. So, once your fortify is done, you're probably like, oh shit, what am I going to do now? I don't know what to do. Well, I'll tell you what you do. Press your javelin spin button. I couldn't tell you what the actual exact numbers of these rotations are, or the cooldowns, sorry, but the way you rotate them essentially means almost always at least one of them is active. Basically all the time. Obviously, there's going to be situations where that's not possible, because the cooldowns don't match up in terms of their numbers perfectly. But mostly, efficient Orisa gameplay basically leads to you either being in Fortify or Javelin Spin about 80% of the time where you're actually fighting, and that 20% where you're out of it, you're bullying the shit out of the enemy tank by just mashing right-click into him and holding W and punching him in his fucking head. So, incredibly fun for both the Orisa player and the other tank player, especially if you play Reinhardt. Imagine you're having an amazing time. You want to swing on her, and then you get hit in the face with a javelin. God, no, you know what? It is what it is. Better card control, nothing wrong with that. You walk on her, you get javelin spinned away. It's a little annoying. You swing on her, she pops Fortify, and she's unkillable. Fortify disappears, and then you get javelined again. You're like, oh, that's kind of annoying. You try to walk on her again, you get javelin spinned again. Oh, that's annoying. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just kind of like, I don't really know what they were thinking, but it's not a very good system that they've designed with this hero. Basically, like I said before, the way you fix her is you let her be headshot and fortify, which is one of the options. There is also another option where you decide that your rework was dog shit, and we should probably nerf this hero again, because their main issue is their survivability. Although they do suffer from other issues as well by simply being too easy to play, but that's an issue generally plagued by a lot of heroes in Overwatch that also are predominantly very good. Like, for example, I don't know, like McCree, who isn't amazing right now, but generally is pretty good, who is extremely easy to play outside of the aim aspect, but like, it's really not that hard if you have hands. So if you don't have hands, then that's unfortunate. But if you do have hands, well, you're in luck, because that's literally all you need to play hitscan efficiently. Therefore, you should probably play hitscan if you're an Overwatch player, because 90% of Overwatch players have room temperature IQ. Anyway, back to Orisa. Extremely problematic, extremely AIDS. Mainly because of her survivability. You would fix that by not allowing her to be headshot, of course. But there are other options. For example, general nerfs to Fortify. Maybe don't make it 50%. Let's maybe make it, I don't know, 40%. Let's see how that works out. Let's maybe, I don't know, change her javelin spin cooldown. Let's maybe not let it push people as far back so she can't oppressively just, like, turbo fist the tank in the corner and then just absolutely annihilate them with their giant horse legs. That would be a pretty good solution to me as well, not allowing the crowd control to be so oppressive. Perhaps we lower the javelin hitbox, the throwing one, by, I don't know, maybe like a metric fuck ton, perhaps? Maybe like, instead of it being the size of a freight train, perhaps we change it to, I don't know, maybe like a Honda Civic instead. That sounds a little bit more reasonable for the current state of the hero. Though, if you are an Orisa player, I understand that you not only do not have a brain, you also have no mechanical skill whatsoever. Therefore, I think making her require literally any mechanical skill whatsoever would just kind of obliterate the hero for all the people who play her, because there is not a single person who plays Orisa that has either a brain or hands. It is usually one of the other, and one of those things is massively deformed to the point where they are essentially unusable by the player. Of course, that effect is reversible by simply changing heroes. You just change heroes and you get your brain or your aim back. But currently, while you're playing Orisa, yes, you are lobotomized, which is very fun to play against, especially when your Orisa player is a one-trick, and then you know for a fact they're horrible at the game. Cool. So now we have a hero who's good at poking, with mass survivability problems, who's extremely easy to play, with a lot of poke, and is just generally very bad for the game, because she bullies the shit out of other tanks with too much crowd control. Let's talk about how we fix it. Even though I've already said about 4 different times how to fix it, I'll say it again. you need to change either her survivability options, which would be incredible, because currently she's borderline unkillable in top 500, which means she is unkillable in Masters, because Masters players are bad. So, there you go. The tank player will never die. Fantastic. Then, obviously, paired with other supports, and she is quite literally unkillable, which is fantastic. So, you gotta change that. Survivability is clearly a big issue. Probably headshot and fortify, lower the numbers, change the cooldowns so she can't just rotate them infinitely, because currently, the way you play Orisa is, like I said before, you just kind of push your buttons in like a rotation, and then eventually your DPS will kill something, but also maybe not, because the matchmaking is horrible. So there's also a chance that doesn't happen. But generally speaking, eventually, when you fortify for the 18th time in one fight, you will hopefully have gotten at least one kill by then. Hopefully. Another solution to fixing Orisa would, of course, be removing her from the game, which is probably the best solution, because tank is a very difficult role to play, and I think it's annoying when one hero waters it down this much, especially as heroes like Hog, who's yeah, also very annoying, but he's terrible. Like, I kind of want Hog to be good. Hog is fun, but like, you know, he is a little brain dead. Anyway, what would be my my fix if I was head of the balance team to fix this extremely annoying hero? I would do a total cooldown rework. Fortify is just bad. It's just simply bad. And if I couldn't do a full rework and I could only change numbers, then I would make Fortify do 30% damage resistance instead, or remain 50%, but she could be headshot and Fortify. I would increase the cooldown of Fortify, so she can't use it as often. And I would lower the duration of the Javelin spin. So when she's spinning, she can't spin for as long. Nothing major, just very small, so that cooldown rotation doesn't line up as well as it does now. So it's still pretty good in the right time, but now can no longer just be like endlessly cycled with her other cooldowns. Because currently, that's basically all you do as Orisa. You just kind of push your buttons in an order, and then eventually something will happen. I don't really know what is supposed to happen, but eventually something will occur if you're the Orisa player. And it's probably your extra chromosome exploding into a horrible aneurysm, or like possibly a giant stroke. That could also be an option. Anyway, this was me just kind of like incoherent ramblings about Orisa and why I don't like her, and why you shouldn't like her either. Was this video remotely productive? Nope. Did I say anything anyone else hasn't said? No. Did this video, that is now 13 minutes long, actually address any core issues with the hero? Not really. This video was just kind of like 13 minutes of nothing. Which is normally what happens on my channel. But you guys still watch. Anyway, I'm gonna go do something else. Mwah. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.